Listen, I'm so aware that this video should have been filmed at the end of December, but no, man. As I was saying, I'm very aware that this video is late. So late to the point where I ask myself whether or not it is even worth it to film it. Because everyone else got their 2020 wrap-up videos out at like the end of December, very beginning of January. I'm filming this on January 9th, which means the earliest this will be posted is January 10th. So yeah, things aren't going great, but I'm gonna push through and do it anyway because I want to. I also just want to say that I haven't posted a video in like 2 or 3 months, which is really bad. And that is because online school is terrible. I'm not gonna elaborate on that. I feel like a lot of you will know what I mean when I say it sucks. So I thought instead of doing a boring 2020 wrap-up video where I just talk about the books and do nothing exciting, I came up with the idea, which is not very original of an idea, but I came up with the idea that I would tier rank the books that I read in 2020. Here's the catch. I haven't read a lot of books in 2020. I think I only read like 23, which is like the lowest amount of books I've read since 2015, which is embarrassing. Anyway, I'm gonna be tier ranking them. Let's go through the tiers, shall we? So at the top, I have could read this 5 times for free, aka I could read this book over and over and over again and I would literally never ever get bored. The next tier is good, smiley face. Not as enthusiastic as the top tier, but it's still good. I still liked it overall. And then the next tier is the middle tier called I don't care, which means I literally could not care less about this book. You could not pay me to care about this book because I don't care. And then the next one is I hate it here. It's not very enthusiastic, I hate it here. There's no exclamation points. It's just I hate it here. I'd rather be somewhere else. I hate it here, period. And lastly, I would rather eat knives than read this again. Also known as I hate it here with a bunch of exclamation points after it. And enthusiastic, I hate it here. Yeah, those are my tiers. I have series in my books right down here. I'm not gonna rank the books individually because that's work, and I also don't remember books individually because my memory sucks. So I'm just gonna be ranking a series as like one individual book. Let's not waste any more time because I just want to get this over with because I haven't filmed a video in 3 months and I'm severely out of practice. I'm nervous and uncomfortable and I feel that little bit of anxiety in the back of my head, like creeping through. So we're gonna keep moving forward and just ignore that, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so the first book I read in 2020 was Serpent and Dove. And I'm gonna be honest, it was quite mediocre. I don't remember there being anything special about it. It was a witch book. There was witches in it, if I remember right. That's really the only thing I remember about it, so you could say it didn't really leave a mark on me. One thing I do remember that I didn't like though, it marketed itself as an enemies to lovers, but I didn't think it was an enemies to lovers. I mean, the 2 characters in the relationship did hate each other. It really annoys me when relationships that are marketed as enemies to lovers have insta-love, because I think when an enemies to lovers romance is also an insta-love romance, that kind of just negates the enemies to lovers aspect of that romance because they're not compatible. Serpent and Dove, whatever it's called. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. I didn't have any really strong feelings against it either way. So I think it's a really solid fit for the I don't care category. So the next thing I read was actually a trilogy called the Winternight trilogy, and it was so good. I have this weird thing for Russian fantasy, and the Winternight trilogy is a Russian fantasy, and it's so well written. I don't have enough good things to say about it. I love the romance in it. That is truly enemies to lovers, or it's like a loose enemies to lovers. They don't hate each other, but it has a lot of the same themes as an enemies to lovers romance should have. So that's why I would like group it in there. But yeah, I loved it. It's so good. It's one of the best fantasy series that I've probably ever read. Just everything is so well developed, from the characters to the plots to the relationship. So I think I would rate this, could read this 5 times for free, because it left such a mark on me, unlike Serpent and Dove. So Winternight Trilogy is going in the could read this 5 times for free. So the next thing I read is the Favor series. No, it was not called Favor, it was called Fever. The Fever series by Karen Marie Moaning. It's basically this fae series that takes place in Dublin. I didn't like it. I thought it was...
What?
Bad.
Okay.
I thought it was bad. I did read the whole series though, because it's one of those series where it's not like difficult to read. So you're like, okay, why not just read the whole thing? I'm gonna hate myself while I read it, but why not just read the whole thing? So I read the whole series. This was like right in the beginning of quarantine when I read this series. I remember being really annoyed because all of the love interests for the main character were just assholes. Every single one. I was always for Mac just branching out on her own and just like fighting evil by herself, because all of her love interests were just terrible people. So that made me kind of hate the book a lot. However, I do think there's like some redeeming qualities in the main character, so that's cool. But also, she's a dumb bitch for ending up with the guy she ended up with. I think she should have just went solo, because her options were not very good. And for that reason, I am going to put it in the I hate it here category, because I hated it there when I read it. So the next book I read is Twilight. I didn't read any of the other books in the series, I only read Twilight. The thing about Twilight is, quality-wise, it is not by any means the greatest book you will ever read. However, when I read Twilight, it had a lot of nostalgia wrapped into it, so I was just really into it for that reason, and I just really enjoyed it. It's like a book you return to that feels like home. That's what Twilight was to me when I read it in May, I think.
Amanda can't think of anything else to say, lol.
I don't have anything else to say. Would I reread it 5 times for free? I don't think it's as deserving to be in the same category as Winternight. I don't think Twilight deserves that. But also...
Thinking.
No. I think it's gonna go in the good smiley face category, because I did enjoy it, but I think it's one of those books that I'll reread like once every 5 years. I couldn't reread it 5 times for free. Sorry, Stephanie Meyer, but... So the next set of books that I read was the Renegades trilogy by Marissa Meyer. Now I'm second guessing, because my first instinct is to put this book series in the same category as Twilight, but I think I like Twilight better than Renegades. Anyway, Renegades is kind of like this take on... It's like if Marvel was a YA book, is the best way I can explain it. It's very much grounded in like comic book superhero tropes, which makes reading it a little bit cheesy at times. I remember that for the first 2 books in the series, they were both really slow for the first like 75% of the books, and then the last 25% was a completely different book. So that made rating them on Goodreads really difficult, because the first 3/4 of the book is slow and boring and there's not much substance there, but the last quarter is where all of the action and build and development takes place. The 3rd book was a lot better than the first 2 though. I do think the 3rd book is the best out of the whole series. I don't think it can be put in the same category as Serpent and Dove though, so I think I have to put it in the good smiley face category. But is it a 4-star book? No.
I do not know what to do.
Whatever. It's going in the good smiley face category. I don't care anymore. The next trilogy I read was the Nevernight trilogy. Is it called something else? Let's find out. The Nevernight Chronicle. That's weird. Nevernight Chronicles. Chronicle? I don't know. So this was like opposite of the Renegades, where I really liked the first 2 books, but I hated the 3rd book. I'm trying to think of things to like say about the Nevernight trilogy, but I can't think of anything right now. I remember being really impressed by the first 2 books. I thought they were really good, action-packed. I liked the character development. I really resonated with the main character. But I think as I read further into the series, it became more obvious to me that it was written by a male author. Read with Cindy did a video about that where she pointed it out, and I think she will probably say it in a much more concise words than I can. But yeah, Nevernight is good until you remember that it's written by a male author and you're like, this is kind of weird for a male author to be writing about this. I have no idea where to put this. I think it has to go in the good smiley face category as well, because it doesn't belong in I don't care, and it doesn't belong in could read this 5 times for free. So good smiley face. Even though I have problems with it, it's fine. So the next book that I read is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Last year I think I read Uprooted and I loved it so much. So I had really high expectations when I went into Spinning Silver, and my expectations were beyond met. Naomi Novik also writes a lot of Russian fantasy, which I appreciate. She does a good job at writing romance. I'm trying to remember what this book is about. You can look it up if you're curious, but I loved reading this book. Naomi Novik, I've only read 2 books by her, but I've been so impressed by both. So I would definitely put this in the could read this 5 times for free, because it's so good and it impressed me so much. Next up is Midnight Sun. This book put me into a reading slump. I probably took like 2 months to read this book. Reading Midnight Sun just put all of the problematic stuff that's in Twilight to the forefront, because you kind of really realize how big of a weirdo Edward is in a way you don't really get to see in Twilight. I did a whole video on Midnight Sun, so if you want my thoughts on Midnight Sun, you can watch that video. But I was really underwhelmed by this and let down. I thought it was a little bit too long for the content we were getting. So Midnight Sun is going to be in the I don't care category, because I truly don't care. I respect it. I respect what Stephanie Meyer was trying to do, but I do not care. Next up is Sarah J. Maas, Crescent City. I think it's called House of Earth and Blood, which, can I just say, why would you say that that is the title but put Crescent City in like bigger text? Because from my understanding, Crescent City is the name of the series, not the book, but I automatically just call it Crescent City because that's what the big text on the cover is. Does anyone else have this problem? I just think it was a poor choice for the design of the cover, because now I just call it Crescent City. What am I supposed to call the second book? Crescent City 2? It wasn't very smart. So when I went into Crescent City, I didn't really have high expectations, because I had read A Court of Thorns and Roses, also by Sarah J. Maas, and I loved it, but I have also read Throne of Glass, but I hated it. So that's why I was a bit hesitant going into Crescent City. But as I got further and further into the book, I grew to really appreciate it and what she was doing. I did find like the first half of the book, or maybe over half of the book, to be slow and boring, but what blew me away about this book was the ending. I didn't expect to be so attached to the characters until I got to the end, and I was like bawling my eyes out for the last 100 or so pages. I just couldn't stop crying, which I didn't expect from this book at all. I think this is the only book that I read this year that made me like bawl my eyes out like a baby. And for the first book in a series to make me cry like that, I'm nervous for the rest of the books in the series, because if I cried that intensely for the first book, I'm scared for what the second, third, fourth, whatever books are gonna bring. I don't think you understand. I was like sobbing so hard that I couldn't see the page. Like my eyes were like welled up with tears. Anyway, because it made me cry that hard, I would have to put it in the top category. Could read this 5 times for free. I think it deserves it. Sarah J. Maas haters can disagree with me, but I really liked it. Now we're finally getting into the trash books. How exciting. So, Crave by Tracy Wolff, I think. This book was fucking bad. I don't even know if I can count it as read, because I only got like 30% through, but it was so it was so bad. First of all, let's just talk about how the cover is like a blatant copy of the Twilight series. I don't even know how that got passed through the publishers. I think whoever was working with her on the cover for this book like totally screwed this author over, because like what the fuck is that? Like, I don't see how someone could have like a brain if they saw the Twilight cover, one of the most popular vampire books ever written, and They were like, oh, here's a vampire novel. Why not just copy it like directly? So the cover copying Twilight alone gave me really bad vibes about this book, but I was like, okay, maybe it's good. Maybe I should just give it a chance, because I had seen it on TikTok all over, people raving about Crave. I was like, okay, if people on TikTok like it, might as well try. It was bad. The writing was so juvenile. It sounded like it was both written by a 12-year-old girl who was trying to write her first book, but it also sounded like it was written by a millennial who was trying to relate to Gen Z, but got it terribly wrong. And you know what else concerned me about this book is on her like dedication page, she wrote something like, for all the Slytherins, and that was a red flag. And then she also included I can't believe this was approved. She also included a quote from Damon Salvatore from the Vampire Diaries.
What the fuck, what the fuck, what?
Like, unironically. And the thing about Crave is it's like, it's a funny book. It's funny to read because it didn't intend to be funny. So it's safe to say that Crave is going into the I would rather eat knives than read this again. It was so bad. Moving on to another terrible book, Wicked Saints. This is another book that I had heard good things about on TikTok. Unlike Crave, I actually finished Wicked Saints. I forced myself to, but that was only because it was super short. This was also really terrible. I don't remember a lot from it, even though I read it within the last couple months, because I completely erased it from my memory because I don't want to remember it. So let's pull up my Goodreads review because I don't remember what I wrote at all. Okay, so I said everything felt like it missed the mark. Yes, I remember this. Everything felt like it was so close to being like properly developed, but then the author just like gave up and said, you know, this is fine. I'm gonna just quit developing this character or developing this relationship. It's fine as it is. But it wasn't fine as it is. Like, everything felt very surface level and underdeveloped and just really mediocre overall. I didn't feel any emotional connection to any of the characters, and I felt like the main character was just overall really disappointing because I felt like she was just reduced to being a love interest and she didn't really play that big of a role in the story at all, and I was left thinking, like, why are you even here? I don't know, it was just really underwhelming, and it sucked because I think the reason I was so disappointed with this book is because I had such high expectations. Like, I expected so much more from Wicked Saints, but it was terrible. I don't think it was as bad as Crave. I think it was a fraction better than Crave just because the writing was better. I think it has to still go in the same category as Crave just because I hated reading it so much. The next two books are from Blood and Ash. The first one and the second one, I forget the name of the second one, but these were so good. I was expecting to hate them because I had gotten my first two recommendations from TikTok and I was like, these both suck. I need to stop taking book recommendations from TikTok. And then I read From Blood and Ash, which I also heard about from TikTok, and it was so good. If you liked A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas, you'll like this book a lot. It's about vampires, which I love because I've been like craving a high fantasy vampire story for so long, and this delivered. The romance is so well written. I love the main character. I feel like she is so unique and individual and she can hold her own. I remember reading the first book, and for the first like half or so I actually felt like giddy because of the build up to the relationship, because you knew it was coming and there was all these like small moments between the two characters. I don't really have much else to say about these two books other than I loved it. I was so impressed and I didn't expect to be this impressed by these two books, but I will put this in the could read this 5 times for free because I'm obsessed. And then the last book that I read was a disappointment, another one, The Shadows Between Us. And can you guess where I found this book?
TikTok.
What do I even say about this book? I felt like a lot of it was underdeveloped. Overall, the plot was like all over the place. I didn't really know what direction it was going. It follows this girl who's like a terrible person. She has no redeeming qualities. I'm all for a morally great protagonist, let's say that first. However, I just think this one wasn't written well. I think that she didn't have like a clear goal. She had a clear goal. She was trying to kill this Shadow King or whatever. But I feel like her actions didn't really align with that. Like, she went in wanting to kill the Shadow King or whatever, and then she just didn't ever really try. I feel like I'm not saying my words coherently and how I want to say them. Read my Goodreads review if you want to know what I think. I hated this book so much. I read the whole thing, but I hated every second of it. So The Shadows Between Us is going in the I would rather eat knives than read this again category. Thank you so much for watching this video for my 2020 wrap up. I read not a lot of books because 2020 did me wrong. Ew. I'm making it a goal to post more content in the new year. We'll see how that goes because I'm starting my next semester in the next couple of days. I'm hoping to get stuff out on a weekly basis. We'll see how that works. I'm taking less classes this term, so maybe that will give me more time, but maybe it also won't. We'll have to see. But regardless, I'll see you guys when I see you, and thank you so much for watching this video.